Good morning. All right, we are in Exodus. This is lesson 1B. We are doing that last chapter of this lesson 1's work. I began the week out thinking we were actually doing chapter 3 and 4, so I actually did both chapters of my homework. I'm way ahead of y'all. But then last night late, as I went back through to finish up the last couple of days of written instructions, which is really, this is probably a good time for me to say, you really should read your instructions before. I don't do that very often anymore because I know the process, so I just jump in and start doing it. And when she said, go into chapter 4, verse, what was it, 7 or 8 or something. Yeah, and I thought that meant we were going to be doing all of chapter 4, and so I did both, my observation worksheets for both. I'm ahead of the game now. I had to go back and redo my chart, but I was so thankful because chapter 3 is loaded. Chapter 3 of Exodus is so pivotal. It's almost like that Mark chapter 8 where he does, who do people say that I am? Thou art the Christ, and then he gives him that beautiful declaration of the work of Jesus Christ and why he came the first time, not to be the Christ King, but to be Jesus our Savior. So now we're seeing this too. We're when you look at the Pentateuch on the whole, the first 5 books of the law as a unit of teaching, we've gone progressively from him presenting himself as our creator, God, and a variety of names we learned as we were going through our Genesis study on that. But now we're at a pivotal point in just the book of Exodus. And if it's all you've done, God is now saying to you, who is he? Now, the last part, lesson 1A, when we did chapters 1 and 2, we did identify the first name usage of God in the book of Exodus, and that's simply the word God. Do you remember what God means? Elohim. The Elohim. And by definition? I am. No, not I am. Elohim is? Elohim is the Trinity. Is the triune God, and it's the Almighty, the powerful God. So, Yes, the creator. And so when you look at this, so in a way he links us by that first usage back into Genesis and brings that forward. Although throughout the book of Genesis, he uses a lot of different names about himself. It built on itself. But it starts with the Elohim and it brings us forward. And the beginning of Exodus goes back to the Elohim. So he's the triune God, and in the bigger context of including Genesis, he's the creator. So he's your creator, and he is the almighty, powerful God, the triune God, the 3-in-1 God, the true God. That's the most essential part. He's the true God. So, and the only God, right? And when you're looking at Exodus, how does that definition that we looked at in chapters 1 and 2 then pertain to the context in which we're looking at here? How does that where are we here in Exodus geographically? Egypt. We're in Egypt. And so why is the Elohim the true God?
Because their worship system is all false.
Right, because their worship system is right, they have multitudes of gods. They even worship the water, for Pete's sake, the Nile River, and the crocodiles and the Pharaoh himself, a human being. So they have all this multiplicity of gods, and it's in stark contrast to God Elohim, who is the true God, and he is the triune God. So with that said, now we're ready to go into Exodus and see one more name of God that he's given to us. And this is the first time this particular name is clearly specified in Scripture. But boy, it won't be the last one. And so now that we have all day today just to look at chapter 3, we're going to get to really camp on this, and hopefully you all did a lot of work on this. Did you all get to do a lot of word studies and a lot of tracking around on this? Some extra research?
Nothing like you do.
So, no, but I just want to know if you all did, because then that's helpful to me in that I'm not giving all the answers. I'm simply, I'm expressing to you, this is what we're looking to discuss at a certain point. what did you find on that? And hopefully that's going to help really build our knowledge together. Okay, so let's start with Exodus 3 with the basics of what we do in inductive Bible study, and that is talk about what the key words were. What did you mark for key words in Exodus 3? Who are the key players in this one? Moses? And we have God, and then we have God displayed in a variety of titles. So let's list all those other titles that we get here.
Okay.
Tell me what the other names of God.
I'm God, your father, the God of Abraham, Isaac.
Oh, that one is so good. Now, I almost have to put it here. Say the God of your fathers. And did you happen to notice that is it in this chapter or the next one? In verse 6, how is that distinct from verse 15? Did you notice the distinction? Single father versus plural father. Why do you think that distinction was made in the text? Why is it, I am the God of your father, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, versus I am the God of your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob?
Because he's talking to the elders there.
Okay, the elders and he says, thus say to the sons of Israel, to all of Israel.
Right.
Okay. Why do you think he made that distinction? Think about Moses' history. Who is Moses?
He's an Israelite.
He is, but he was adopted into the family of Pharaoh, right? Through Pharaoh's daughter. So do you think that there was a point made here in making sure that God is clarifying, Moses, you are an Israelite?
Oh, yeah.
Do you think?
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? It caught my attention because when I was writing it out, I went father and then fathers, and I'm going, well, that seems real pointed. It's very specifically. So he connects, number one, he connects in that verse 6, he connects Moses decisively to Israel's lineage, right? And then there's a secondary point to this. So I am the God of your father or fathers is stated. And then it goes on to say Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, what does that title or name do for him, for our understanding of who he is? What do you think he's pointing out to us? Where have we seen that before?
Well, so
Was it mentioned in a previous chapter? Go back to chapter 2 at the very end. We see it there at the end. What does it say at the end of chapter 2? In verse 24. So God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with who? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So this phrase then identifies you back to another qualifier of who this God is for the context of this study. He is the God of what? Covenant. So every time he says, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, he's literally saying, I am your covenant God.
yes.
He didn't say it that way, but he identifies it. Isn't that interesting? Did you all pick up on that? Yeah, I just love that. So the God of your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and that's in, now what did I say, 6 and 15? Right? And you can go back to, I'm going to put on here, chapter 2, verse 24? Yeah, 24. 24. And I'm going to put on here covenant God. Because that's not something that was brought out in the homework, but it caught my attention. And what caught me first was it wasn't plural. And it's always been plural. Everywhere you see this, I am the God of your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And when it said father, I went, why would he do that? And that's when it dawned on me. He's making sure Moses connects, and that the people reading this in posterity for us to look at this and say, yes, Moses is an Israelite. I can imagine that would have been another argument somebody would have had at some point, probably otherwise, right? Okay, so what are some other names besides God in this text that you identified as God? That big infamous title,
Lord, I am who I am.
I am. And then Lord, Lord, all capital letters, did you notice?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what the 𝐂𝐸𝐷, what do they call it?
The Tetragrammaton, yes. And this is going to be so cool when you see how this all pulls together, because you've got to understand that some of the things that we've complicated it. We've overcomplicated it in many ways. If we had just, we always do. If we had just stuck with I am, that would have been the name. But instead now we've got Lord, but we've got others as well. From Lord comes other things, and we're going to talk about that when we do our word studies, okay? So the Lord God and the I am, I think that was pretty much it, wasn't it? The Lord, the God of, 18, verse 18.
Lord, the God of the Hebrews.
The God of the Hebrews. Okay, there we go. So those are the names of God that we come across. And I kind of had to subdivide it here.
Hey, Katie,
Yes.
do you know how the name Hebrews came up? I mean, why
Tell
they're
me.
called No, I'm asking.
Because I think in the context
Where
of,
did it come from?
I think I didn't look into
I
that.
just thought
I know the name, the Jew comes from Judah, when they're called Jews. Hebrew, I have to look that one up. I have looked it up before, and I have studied that before, but I've forgotten.
I used to know that too.
Yeah, I used to know that. Of course. You see, you don't get to ask questions you don't know answers to. No, just kidding. Yeah, normally I would have known that, but and I did. Hold on, let me look here on my notes real quick, because you see if I looked. I know I looked it up, but then I went beyond it because I thought that's a whole nother story, a whole nother teaching, and I didn't want to get distracted. However, I did get distracted with a million other things. Well, see, and also it was at the same time I was thinking I was doing 2 chapters, so I was hurrying. Have you got an answer for us, Susan?
It's not a good
Well, Hebrew it refers to the Jewish. I believe that in this context specifically, it's doing the same thing that this phrase here does.
Right.
It takes us back to the people of God, that He is in covenant with them, and that they're an identifiable nation. Right. I believe it distinguishes their nation as the Hebrew nation, right, or the Israelite nation, in contrast to the Egyptians. And also when he goes on here, like in verse 8, and he talks about the place of, did you notice it? He doesn't say the land of, he says the place of, where these people are temporarily, the Canaanite, the Hittite, the Amorite, the Pezrite, the Hivite, the Jebusite. So he mentions that again in 17, just before he says in 18 the Hebrew. Did you catch it? So in 17 he says, I will bring you who? The Hebrews, which he identifies in the next verse, 18. I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt, that's that nation, and to the land of the Canaanite, Hittite, Amorite, Pezrite, Hivite, Jebusite, and a land flowing with milk and honey, and I will... And they will pay heed to you, and you will say to the elders of Israel, will come to the king of Egypt, and you will say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us, so now let us go. And so I think it's a national thing. It has to do with identifying them as a nation of people distinct from these other nations.
I've got the meaning of it.
Oh, good. Go ahead.
It comes from the Hebrew word ivri, I-V-R-I, derived from the Semitic root BR, meaning to cross over or from the other side, referring to Abraham's journey from across the Euphrates River.
Okay, so again, so it becomes probably, this is my guessing, guys, so don't hold me to it, but when they crossed that Euphrates River and went in and took possession of that land, he is here identifying them as that nation he's going to put on that land. Mm-hmm. And I think in the flow of context, just as I said, naming all these other nations, including Egypt, of whom he's going to take them out, he identifies them, Hebrew, as a distinct nation. Does that make sense? Okay. Good discussion already. Off track, but good. Okay. But that was a good point. And that's, again, one of those things that when you have a question like that, it helps to, number one, look at the immediate full context, look what's said before, what's said after, so you want the flow of thought, so that you can kind of wrap your mind around, well, what is the subject kind of here? The subject is what he is going to take them out of, and he's taking them to the place where these other nations are, but they're going to dispossess or depose them, and they are going to become the nation on that land.
Right. I wish I'd thought of it earlier when I was studying.
Yeah, right. See, I know. Okay, so we got Moses and we have God, a multitude of subject matters here. What else do we have?
Are we talking about names?
Key words.
Oh, key words, okay. I put sight, see, look, saw.
Oh, you went to all the verbs. Yes. Okay, they are really significant. Now, I didn't mark them as keywords, but they are a key subject matter. So I would just say all those are describing the attributes of God by declaring what he's like, which is going to go back to all of this title. But yes, those are good. And did you look all those words up? No. See, I did. I did. I looked up all the word studies on every one of those. Also on affliction and sufferings and deliver, right? Also things. Pardon? Cry. Very good. He's heard their cries. Now, cries, Kay had us identify that along with a variety of other words. To cry also was associated with what other words in that? When they were crying out, why were they crying out? Because of their bondage. So cries, bondage. What else? A couple of others. What was happening to them? They were under what? Affliction. And oppression. And suffering. Okay. So you can see how all those are kind of one subject matter of what was going on with them. The other one, okay, go ahead and give me the ones on God again. The ones that you just mentioned.
Oh. Sight, look, see.
I'm going to put see, heard, what else?
Oh, okay. See, heard. Well.
Know. Anything else? I like it, in verse 8, what did he do there? I love this one.
I've come down.
He's come down.
Yeah.
So these are all action words,
Yes.
actions of God, right?
Yeah.
These are, we would call these afflictions against man, or what was occurring against man. So it's actually kind of almost a contrast if you take those in groups. The one is what was happening to Israel versus how was God responding. What was happening versus how does God respond? Okay? So that might be how you would want to identify this. Now, when you're doing some Bible study books of the Bible or places that you're studying, each of these words would be very important to be real distinctive, right? Identify them because God is telling you don't do this or do this, right? And you need to know exactly what he's saying on that. But in this context here, what we're looking at is the circumstances that they were in and how God will respond to it.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
So let's just put on this circumstances. And this is God's response.
Well, and the other is part of God's response is I will.
Yeah, I will.
They will.
I will.
There's lots of those.
There's some contrast to that. Sometimes it's I will and what they will or what you will.
Right.
Okay. The I will, which the I will can really go underneath, I think, underneath all these responses. I will do this and I will and I will. Very interesting how it's such a very, once you get it kind of focused in that regard, what you're seeing then is this activity that's happening against God's people and how God is going to respond to it. And there's all these multitudes of words that you can mark. After a while, if you tried to mark each one of those distinctively different from one another, you'd have so many key words on your page, you wouldn't even be able to see what you're looking at anymore.
But he does all those action words, but he says, okay, I'm the father of your Abraham, Isaac, the covenant God, the covenant promise keeper. And I hear, and my name. So he says so much about himself.
Yes. So that's a really good point. Although you're almost going right to a conclusion conversation on what we looked at here on the whole. But since you have, let's go ahead and do that. So how do you perceive then what God is doing for us, even today, by the way he's presenting this particular chapter? This might be what's going on in your life. This might be your circumstances. But God, right? But God. How many times have we heard that one in sermon? But God. Nothing is impossible with God, and God is the sovereign over this. But God means also you have a place to turn to, you have a place to run to, you have a redeemer, you have a savior, so we're going to look at all these. Another thing that we saw was let's see if I can find it. Where was it? I have seen, I will send, I know, stretch out my hand. I thought it said he had compassion. Is that in this chapter or the next one? He had compassion on them. It might be in chapter 4. It might be in the next chapter. Okay. But it's really interesting to me how we're seeing the intimacy of God in his care for his people, right? It's almost a distinction from the first 2 chapters where it's more, this is the history and this is what's unfolding. And then we hit this chapter 3 and it's like anchoring. It's like it grabs you and it holds you down, and it says, pay attention to this because this is your salvation. This is your redeemer. This is your help in time of trouble. This is, and so God is going to explain to us in this chapter who he is for Israel, but not only for Israel, for who else? For us. So as you're reading this, don't be distant from it, but really, drink it in and bring it into your personal life and say, when God is doing this for Israel, he's demonstrating it to us to understand this is who he is to all people.
Plus, he wants a relationship.
He wants it got broken in the garden. He wants to repair it.
But he wants a relationship with Moses.
Yes.
And he's working on that relationship of trust with Moses.
Yes.
With us.
Yes.
If we ask him questions.
Yes. And just a heads up for you guys, there's going to be a distinction because as we go in here and look at this storyline with Moses today, we're going to see Moses arguing with God, right? And at a certain point then what we're going to see is how God responds to him here. When you get to chapter 4, I want you to see another issue where he has with Moses and how it's a different kind of response. Because there's such a distinction there. It really caught my attention, and I don't want you to miss it. So I'm bringing that up to you right now. Just make yourself a note that there's a contrast. God's response to Moses here, contrast it with what you'll see in chapter 4. And then think it through. Why the difference? Why does God respond here in this way, but there in that way, in that particular one? I want you to keep that in mind. Okay. So that's just a heads up for next week. And that's only because I did that next week already. And it's in my head already. Okay. So we also have another word in here, the sign. And this thing called a sign is coming up here, and it's going to continue on also into next week. So you want to make sure you catch that sign. Now there's a specific event that's going on here at the opening of chapter 3 that we didn't mention. What is it about? A burning bush. And another name.
Place, you mean?
How about in verse 2?
Angel of the Lord.
Ah, yes, angel of the Lord. Let's put that up here. Angel of the Lord. And so we want to talk about that. How much time did y'all spend on that subject matter? quite a bit? Did you get word studies done? And did you go into to check out how it links up with everything else that's said in the chapter on the whole? I hope you did, because that was really good. And it's going to help you a lot in your Old Testament studies once you catch an understanding of what this means. Okay? Okay, so we've kind of got, just through discussing these key words, and we've got a pretty good feel then about what's going on here, right? As you look at the chapter Exodus 3 on the whole, what is it that is happening in this event? What is God doing? And who is the major key subjects in here?
There's an awful lot of God said.
God said, God said, God said, okay? And what is the most dramatic thing that God does in this chapter? Well, let's just start. I want to read the first part of this. Let me just go through here. Moses was pasturing the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. By the way, does anybody know what Horeb is? Or that's Mount Sinai. Isn't that interesting? So he's he's quite a ways away from Jethro. He's been pasturing the flock, and he gets all the way to Mount Sinai, where this event is going to occur. The angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, yet the bush was not consumed. So Moses said, I must turn aside now and see this marvelous sight, why the bush is not burned up. When the Lord saw that he turned aside to look, God called to him from the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. Very cool statement. Think on that one. And he said, Here I am. And he said, Do not come near, remove your sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. And he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of Jacob. The Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at who? God. So who is the angel of the Lord? It's God, right? And in some cases, we refer to it then as a pre-incarnate appearance of Jesus. Now, a lot of people struggle with this greatly. So we want to talk about this subject of this angel of the Lord, and by definition, what this means. This is called a theophany. T-H-E-O, theo, P-H-A-N-Y, a theophany. By definition, it's simply a visible manifestation of mankind to God. And it's representing God's presence in an extraordinary way. Now, we're going to see this over and over. And actually, if you think back in Genesis, he's already done this more than once. Often involving sensory elements like light, sound, or even physical form. In this case, what's the light?
Fire.
The burning bush, the fire. So there are all kinds of examples on this. So we're going to say a theophany is a visible manifestation of God to man. It's something that represents. So you really want to hone in on that. It represents God. It is not actually God, because if you should see God face to face, what would happen? You shall die, right? So this, again, oh my goodness, think on this. The angel of the Lord came. He saw God. It says, and he saw God. He covered his face, for he was afraid to look at God. So at this point, he knows this is God. And yet God has done what in the verse 8? I have come down to do what? To deliver them. So what we see here, if you just look at the flow of chapter 3 at this point, the most significant thing is, what did God do? He came down. And this is going to really be powerful when you go to the New Testament, because what does Jesus say about himself? I am the one who has come down out of heaven. I am the bread who has come down out of heaven. I have come down. I think about Ephesians chapter 4. He says the one who's ascended has also descended. He came down. I mean, so there is just so, honestly, this chapter right here could take us a year with all the possibilities of study. And I have gone into a bunch of extra. I've got a whole sheet on this. If we get time, I'll go through some of it with you that just accentuates the things that you will have looked at on your own today. But for a starter then, our theme on this chapter, let's put here, theme. The first and foremost thing you have to see on this is that God has come down. God comes down. I mean, we know it's about Moses too. That he's a primary in this, but he's come down, and in the coming down, what did he come down to do? Well, what does he do? He's going to speak to whom? Moses. So when he comes down, what does he do with Moses? He calls him from where? From the burning bush where the angel of the Lord is, whom is God, covers his face. So he comes down to Moses to call Moses to do what? To deliver the people. So God comes down and he calls Moses to deliver his people. Whoops. Or you could say Israel if you want to. I just put it says in the text his people, that's why I stuck with that phraseology. But it's easy to go into there and say, that he's speaking of Israel. Okay, or the Hebrews. We'll see later. Okay, so, all right. So that's the flow of thought there. I wanted to do that first so that you capture the essence. It's very easy. There's so much in here that I think are very strong subject matters. Like the I am part. To me, that is probably the most powerful part in the whole thing, is how he identifies himself as the I am. But that's not the narrative. The narrative storyline, if we're following what is God doing for Israel as a nation, well, we go back to Exodus 1. What did we see in Exodus 1? Where is Israel? What's your title? In Egyptian bondage. And what happened while they were in this Egyptian bondage, that's of significance? They grew to become a mighty nation. Now that's powerful and significant because of what? Because of what information that's come to us in Genesis? What did God tell Israel, or what did God tell Abraham?
400 years.
Yeah, your people shall be in bondage for 400 years, but I shall bring them out. So when they went down, the very beginning of Exodus chapter 1, they went in as how many people? 70. But at this point, we're talking 400 years have passed. That was one of the questions Kay asks you in those last couple of days of homework, is what is our time reference here? Well, we're 400 years later. We have gone from the Abrahamic promise. And by the way, there's probably 150 or 200 years time lapse first. They go into their captivity, then it's another 400 years. So we're talking probably 600 years or close. I'm just really rounding it, guys, but really it's longer than 400 because you had to get through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. From the promise of Abraham, then came Isaac and Jacob, and the story of Joseph and how he got taken down into bondage. So in Exodus 1 starts out then about Israel, about the narrative. It's Israel, they're in Egyptian captivity, just like God said back in Genesis 15. And they grew into a mighty nation. What did God tell Abraham? I will make of you what? A mighty nation, a great nation. Then you get to Exodus 2. The narrative, the flow of this historical record is what happens at the end of 400 years or close to the end of that? Who is born? Moses is born. So now we have the first eye sighting of a redeemer, a picture. Remember, now what we now know too is we're seeing Moses as a type of Christ. Okay? He comes as this redeemer. He is born and he is kept alive. Now, how does that relate to the life of Christ? What happened to Jesus when he was born? He was kept alive. Who wanted to kill him? The king, yeah. I was going to say Pharaoh. It wasn't Pharaoh. It was
Herod.
Herod. Thank you, Herod. So the Roman Empire wanted to kill him. What did we see in Revelation 12 on that subject matter? Satan went after the woman to kill her child when he was born. So in Exodus 2, we're seeing this storyline, this narrative. Moses is born and he's kept alive. Now we get to chapter 3, and the narrative is now Israel is there. They've grown to a mighty nation. A Redeemer has been born. He's been kept alive. Now God comes down because it's time. We're at the 400-year point. And he comes down and he calls this man, Moses, who has been kept alive supernaturally by the power and preservation of God. And he calls him out to deliver his people. Are you seeing the narrative? So there's a narrative, but within narrative now, we are going to look at lots of doctrinal truths about who God is. And that's where we're going to kind of get ourselves wrapped up in circles and kind of get distracted from our narrative flow. So that's why I wanted to kind of make sure you get the narrative first, because that's the part that we have to title our chapters by, is the narrative. But within the narrative, there are beautiful biblical doctrinal truths about God and about who man is. Remember, who is God, who is man? That's what we're looking at. Okay, so God comes down. He calls Moses to deliver his people. In verses 1 through 6, how does he do that? What do we see? How is this calling occurring in 1 through 6?
He appears in a burning bush.
He called him from a burning bush. So God calls Moses from a burning bush. Now, we all kind of know the burning bush, right? If you say the burning bush, everybody's real familiar with that within Christendom. So tell me some points that you see on this particular part of the narrative. The first one we want to point out is that the angel of the Lord appears to him, right? It's the angel of the Lord. It says that he appeared to Moses. Okay, I liked that word appeared there, because again, it's another kind of a picture of who God is and his response. Well, one of his responses, he appeared, right? He appeared to Moses. That's in verse 2. What happens next in that appearing encounter?
Moses was curious,
He was curious, and he approaches, and what happens?
and the bush is not burned up.
Wow, that was interesting. A phenomenon that should not be happening, which is what caught his attention. That's what drew him to come in and look closer. So a bush that's not actually being consumed, so it's not actually fire, but it's something that appears as fire, right? It kind of makes me think of Pentecost, when the fire came down from heaven and fell upon everyone, but it wasn't really fire, right? But again, it was a theophany, appearance of God coming in a form that we could see, but the comprehension is to understand it's not really fire. It was God, in this case, by the Spirit, who came to indwell people. Okay, so then here we have the angel of the Lord. So when you see that term, the angel of the Lord, and you're going to see that often. Now, there are times when angels of God do show up. How are you going to know whether it's speaking of the angel of the Lord, meaning God himself in a theophany, or when it's just an angel? How are you going to discern which is?
He tells them it's holy ground,
Okay, yes.
and an angel wouldn't say that.
Yes.
It's holy.
And actually in the narrative, if you follow the pronouns and if you structured it, it's very hard to structure narrative, but if you structured it, you would connect the angel of the Lord to verse 4. And when the Lord saw, he turned to look, and God called from him from the midst of the burning bush. Well, where's the angel of the Lord? In the midst of the burning bush. So the narrative flow of thought connects you with pronouns that are previous, and in this case, and even an identifying name, which is the angel of the Lord. Then the next time it's mentioned in the same location, He's looking in the same place, and now he doesn't call him the angel of the Lord, he calls him God. Then you keep moving forward, and he, in verse 7, he calls him the Lord. So now you've got connected to the angel of the Lord 3 titles. You have got, so now we're going to say, we're going to put all this together now, aren't we? The angel of the Lord, God, I am, and the Lord. All of these are one. And then there's, by expansion, the one which is the covenant name, the God of your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So we have several titles then in here of who God is, and each one, somehow they're all being linked together, right? So if he has already said the angel of the Lord, then he calls him God, and then he calls him the Lord. That means even though those are 3 names that you can look up and get Hebrew word definitions on, and yet who are they? They're all one. They're all God. They're just giving you different qualifiers of expression in them in the way that they are presented, but they are still God. They're all God, which is cool, right? Okay. All right, so we see the angel of the Lord appeared, and Moses approaches. And then God tells him, it's holy ground. It is holy ground. So right there, one of the ways you know that in fact you're identifying this correctly is, what would make it holy? And what does the word holy mean? Right? Did you think to look up the word holy at all? Okay, holy is Kodesh, Q-O-D-E-S-H. It means holiness, sacredness, separateness. When you go into the dictionary of biblical language, it says it's holiness, the quality of moral purity, with a focus that is a unique state unlike corrupt humanity. In other words, it's in contrast to us. Yeah. This holiness is not us. This is a holiness that comes from something else that is actually sacred. So in the context then, by definition, we have the name God, the angel of the Lord, and the Lord. We now know holiness is affixed to the Lord. And so when he says you're on holy ground, it's because why? He's in the presence of whom? God. So the way you distinguish if the angel of the Lord is just an angel or whether it is speaking of God, a theophany of God, is to say, what is the flow of thought? Look at it in its context. Make a list if you need to, which is what I did over and over again. I made several of them. Because each time I looked at it, I saw something slightly different. It was really cool. Very fun process. But when you look at the context will define it for you. The context will show you, is this speaking of God or just any angel? Is he there just as a messenger, or is he because I also looked up the word angel. Did anybody look up angel? Okay, where have I got it? Let me look on here and see if I've got it on here. I did this last night twice, so I know it's in here somewhere. I know, I wrote it on the back. Pretty sure. No, I didn't write it on the back. Oh, here it is. Oh, here it is on my notes. There's so much, you guys. Okay, angel of the Lord. Angel is number 4397, Malawk, M-A-L-A-W-K. It means messenger, representative. Okay, so it can be either a messenger or a representative. Remember, we one of the things happened with us when we did Revelation was the letters were written to the angel of the church. In the end, we knew that if it was a writing to a person at a church where they were going to, and read this to the church at Ephesus, at Smyrna, at Pergamum, all these different churches, then it had to be a human being. So that messenger in that context is speaking of a man. And by context, it's probably the pastor of that congregation. He is their messenger, their prophet, the one who speaks on behalf of God to them. Well, in this case, the angel of the Lord is a messenger also. But what kind of a messenger is this one? He is God himself by context, and therefore it is God speaking. That makes him a messenger, an angel, a messenger of the Lord. And by title, he gets that title Lord in there. Very, very easy. And he says it is holy ground. Any thoughts or other questions on that?
So I looked up cross references on sandals, and
Oh, good. I didn't do that.
slaves were barefoot.
Yes.
And the prodigal son was barefoot, and the father said, bring him sandals. So he came back as a slave, and then the father put sandals on him to identify that he's not a slave.
Yeah.
And so tell him to take his sandals off is saying, you're holy, you're not holy.
And
You're
I
a
am holy.
slave.
Yeah.
Take your shoes off, you know.
Very cool. I also thought about in the garden, you know, when Adam and Eve, they were naked, right? And they had no shoes, they had no clothing, they had no covering at all. And what did God do for them? Because once they sinned, he covers them. What does Moses do when he approaches God at that burning bush? He covers his face, right? Because he's not holy. And I heard a sermon this week that just tickled me because when he said it, as soon as he said it, I went, that's it. Do you remember the time when in Ezekiel when we were looking at the different angels? And one of the angels had like eyes all over his body and all this, but he had 6 wings. And it says 6 wings to cover his face. 2 wings to cover his face. 2 wings to what? Cover his feet. Interesting. And 2 wings to fly by. No angel needs 6 wings. They only need 2. But so what are the other 2 sets of wings for? To cover, because where do they abide? Where do they? In the holy presence of God. Even on the Ark of the Covenant, what does it show? It shows them covering the Ark. They use their wings to cover their face over the Ark because they're in the presence. It's symbolic. It's a picture. In the presence of God, you are not holy, including the angels. They are not holy. Not in the qualifier of God himself. They are not like God. They are like us. They are created beings. They have free will and choice. The ones that are staying there are considered the holy angels, but they still are not God, and therefore they're not on the same level. We're not on the same plane. We are not God. Cover yourself.
And that's
Very cool.
another way to tell whether an angel that appears is maybe a pre-incarnate or not, is if you're worshiping and they don't tell you to get up.
Yeah,
Or they,
that's exactly
some of these
right.
things is how they respond to what the human is doing.
Yes. What is the
Also
response?
tells.
If the angel, for instance, what was it? It was John who had these angels appearing to him, and at one of the encounters, was it in Daniel? I can't. Maybe it was in
It's Daniel where he
Daniel. He
touches
fell
him and
down.
strengthens
He
him.
fell down to worship, and when the angel says, no, don't do that, I am just a servant of the Lord, he will reject that worship. But if he accepts the worship and he touches him and strengthens him, then who is it? God himself. So who can hear you and give forgiveness? Who can encounter you and give you a new name? Who can encounter you and give you a promise and says, I will do this? Only God. So if there's that kind of a conversation going on, and if he accepts the worship, then you can know that that is God. The context should show you that. But if he rejects it, then it's an angel. The Abraham encounter with the 3 angels that approach him, remember? 2 of them go down into Sodom. 1 stays behind, and then it says in the text, the Lord speaks to him.
And there's a little negotiation that
Yes,
goes on.
yeah, right. But it's very interesting that there's a distinction between of the 3 quote angels. One of them is the Lord. The other 2 are angels. Very cool. Learning so much. I mean, I know this seems for some of you, because you guys have been doing this for a long time. For some people, these kind of conversations are like, yeah, I know. But there are a lot of people that don't know. And I can remember back when I didn't know. And I was like, but how do you know? You know, how do you distinguish? How do you know show me how you know. I don't want you to just tell me. I want you to tell me how you know. So what we're doing is in these conversations in a precept class is we are having a discourse that helps you reason through and give you tools in your hand so that the next time you encounter that title, the angel of the Lord, you will say to yourself, so is this God or is this just an angel? Usually if there's a definitive article, the angel of the Lord, generally that is the Lord, that's God. But even better than just that is the understanding of looking at the narrative and seeing what are the indicators that are given to you as to, is this the holy God, the one who is the covenant-making God, the promise-making God, the name-changing God, the miracle-working God? Because later in this flow of thought, where the angel of the Lord, who is the Lord, who is God, who is the I am, later it says, and he gives him miracles in verse 20. I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all my miracles. You know, it's very easy for us to put that back and say, Moses performed miracles. No, Moses did not. God used Moses as his messenger to the people. This is another picture of Jesus as that type of Christ. He comes as a messenger, as a miracle worker, and he performs these miracles, but it's who? My miracles, God says. Okay, in verse 20. Okay. All right, so he says here, I am the God of I am the God of your father. And then it goes on. So this is Israel's, I'm going to put this in a different color so you see it. Israel's covenant God and Moses's lineage. So that's what we learned right in that particular point. We see 2 points. Number one, it's talking about Israel's covenant God. Secondarily, it links Moses very clearly to that lineage. Okay? That's in verse 6. Okay. All right, next. Any other points before we go to that next paragraph? I love, he hid his face for he was afraid to look at God. You can link that back to the holiness of God, that he is standing on holy ground and he recognizes he's in the presence of God. So now we get to 7. Now we start seeing these verbiages of I have seen them, I have heard them, I am aware of these things. And what did we say about what we learned about God in that? Let's just start this list here as we go along, because I think it'll be easier if we do it progressively. What have we learned about God so far? Well, one thing is he's holy. Now, this is what we call over here an analytical list. It doesn't have to be word for word from the text. What we have done is already done all the word for word, and we've gotten the precise information, and now we are drawing out of it our understandings that we are learning. They're based on doctrine, but they can be put into your own words. So he is holy is sufficient. Even though it doesn't say he is holy, it says you are standing on holy ground, right? But what do we learn about God? That he's holy. He's unapproachable, right? He is holy. Or what else do we learn?
He's a covenant God. He's a covenant
Okay.
with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Yes, he's a covenant God. And we go back to Genesis 12 and 15 as that foundational piece that was given to us on that, the covenant God, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. What else did you learn? What about the fact that he appeared in a bush? What do you think that? What do you learn about God? Think about it. If you actually saw God face to face, you would die. And yet he made it possible to appear before a man in a form that man would not be destroyed. What do you learn about God?
Cares about us.
Yeah.
He's protective, you killed.
He's protected. He doesn't want to destroy you. And what else does he want?
You do it.
Personal relationship.
He wants
He wants your attention.
He wants that personal contact. Remember, the garden what did God used to do in the garden with Adam and Eve? He walked with them and conversed with them. There was.
Imagine.
Can you not imagine? I know. And you know, I saw my son sent me a YouTube video on a young man who did a very good job, actually. He was talking about the Garden of God and how he felt like in the Garden of God, it wasn't, he actually says it's not a garden. Well, I disagree with that. It is a garden. He uses that verbiage and talks about tilling the soil and so forth. But he did go on to say that he thinks, because of the imagery that's in there, that this was the temple of God, the dwelling of God, and God was dwelling with man at that point. We do know that. He was walking with him, and he had also blown the Spirit of God within them when he gave him the breath of life. We know the breath of life is the Holy Spirit. But we lost both of those things, his walking with us and his physical presence dwelling within us when we sinned, because holiness cannot be with unholiness, with sin. So we lost it. So what we're looking forward to is the reiteration of that, or the redemption of what we lost in the garden. I think it's very interesting that he talks about this idea that in the garden, the gate faced toward the east. Does that sound familiar? That he put cherubim at the doors. Does that sound familiar? Even when you think about the temple, what they embroidered on the veil of the temple were these cherubim. The imagery that's in there. This boy did a really good. He was very young. I say boy. He's a young man, but young, and he did a very good job. And I thought that's good. That was a fresh perspective. I hadn't really comprehended or seen myself. I've always just referred to it as the garden, and it was the garden. But in the garden was the dwelling of God, and he dwelt with man. And yet, what do we know about God in that scenario? He knew man was going to fail and that he would have to leave. He had a plan. That's why he didn't immediately put man within the Holy of Holies temple in his dwelling in heaven, because if man had sinned there, where is there to go afterwards? There has to be a plan to redeem and then allow them to come and be there forever. Okay, so what are we learning about God here? About the idea that he came down to converse with man face to face in a manner in which God would not consume us or kill us. So what do we learn about God?
Personal.
He's personal.
Cares.
He cares for man.
He sees our affliction.
Yeah, he does. We're going to get to that next, but yeah, he sees our affliction. Boy, is that one a loaded subject. Affliction, that's like, he sees our state, he sees where we're at, he sees our problem, he sees the barrier even that's there, and he's willing to persevere in drawing us back to himself so that we can have that relationship. Any other points as far as verses 1 through 6 on what we learn about God? I think it's interesting that he said to him, "Do not come near." Again, it's another form of compassion. He's a personal God and he's compassionate. Or merciful. Right? He in his mercy, he says, "That's far enough, Moses. Don't come any closer." And he tells him, "Remove his sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground." I thought about the garden, or also with Cain and Abel, where Cain brought the wrong kind of gift to the Lord in sacrifice. And it kind of made me think of the idea of the sandals on the feet, where Abel removed the sandals and brought the sacrifice of blood. But Cain did not. Isn't that interesting that you can go there in your mind as you read these stories, how much more there is there? Okay, 7 to 12. What is going on in 7 to 12?
I did 7 to 10,
Oh, okay.
but
I went to where it says then. There is a but in verse 11.
yeah.
So either way, but it really won't matter. I don't think adding those other two verses in there.
Well, that one, 7 through 10, is all about God
Mm-hmm.
God sees the affliction,
Yeah.
and God will deliver.
Yeah. That's good. Okay, so God, okay, that's good. So the title on this is God heard the cries of his people or saw the affliction of his people, right? The affliction of his people, and what did he do?
He says,
In,
I-
there's a so in verse 8. So what did he do? Because he saw that affliction, so
so I've come down.
I have come
to
down.
deliver.
So
That'd be better.
I have come down.
But I would say deliver there.
Okay, I did too, to deliver them. And I also like the fact that it says, so I have come down to deliver, even though we know he's calling Moses to go and do this, it's God that's actually the main character of the delivery.
Yes.
It is not Moses. Moses is a servant through whom he will work, but it is God that is doing this. So in any points that you want to point out here in these verses that you think are significant of insight on God? He has seen. He has given heed. He came down, he said, and then what else did he?
Aware of their sufferings. I love that one.
Aware. Okay, aware.
And that word is acknowledge.
Oh.
It's acknowledging
That's beautiful.
their suffering.
So we could say over here about what we learned about God in that then is he is aware of us. And we could say he is all-seeing. I would even say you could say that he is omnipresent. If he's able to see and to hear, where is his abode? In the heavenly, right? He sits upon his throne in heaven. And yet he sees man and he hears man and he's aware of man.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
But it's not just that he sees. That's why I like that definition of aware. It's acknowledge.
Mm-hmm.
It's an
He-
acknowledgement. It's not just, oh yeah, I see, but I'm going to do something about it.
It's the word yada, and it means to know in the most intimate way.
Say this again.
The word means it's.
Which
yada,
word? Which word? Tell me.
that he knows or he acknowledges, let's see, go back.
Which verse are you in is what I'm asking.
3, I'm in verse.
Oh, you're back up in
Oh,
3.
wait a minute, 3. I am aware, where it says I am
Oh,
aware.
verse 7. Okay,
When
aware.
it goes, I am aware, it is the word, aware is the word yada,
Yes.
which is a very intimate Hebrew word.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So how, at this point then, when you see that God is aware, he's all-seeing, he's omnipresent, he's acknowledging, he cares, he's what then? He's a personal God. So what are we seeing on the whole here is that this is a personal God. And he is a covenant God. Wow. I mean, there's many other things as well, but what he seems to be conveying the most in here is how in tune he is, how connected he is, how personal and intimate he is with us as his creation. That's kind of almost hard for me sometimes to... It's very heavy. It's very, what is the right, humbling, right? That an all-powerful, holy God would even concern himself with us. We are so far. And honestly, even though we all have the abiding Holy Spirit, so God sees us through his Son. Thank you, Jesus. Because if he didn't, he would consume us. But that he cared so much for that which he created, he is providing and has provided and is making a way for us to have that communion with him restored. We've lost it. And in the place that we are right now, in the spirit, we'll have that communion. But one day we will see him face to face. Walk with him again. And eventually, after the work here upon this planet Earth is done, we will go to be with him in heaven and abide there forever. If he had started with us in the heavenly and we failed, there would be no recourse for us. I never thought of that till just this morning. It just kind of came to me as we were talking. I'm like, wow, if we had started there, what would he have done with us? Well, what did he do to the angels that fell? They're done. There is no recourse. I think in Hebrews chapter 2 it says that he had concern for man, not for the angels, but he had concern for man. The angels were in the presence of God and rejected him. We are, however, upon planet Earth, and there is a process of coming to God through faith. And it's a drawing. And isn't that amazing?
We're made in his image.
Yes, yes. Wow. Okay. Yes.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
In verse 2, Moses looked and saw the bush burning with fire. And then in verse 3, I must turn aside and see this marvelous sight. If he saw it, why will...
Well, he's seeing it from a distance.
I have to go. He's out there tending the flock. So he's like, all right, now I have to go.
So in other
Where do you
words, he's here and he's looking out in the hall and he's going, I'm seeing a bush. And it doesn't get burned up. Why does it just keep burning and keep burning? He knows how bushes burn. He knows that they burn for a while and then they die out. They are consumed and the fire stops. But this one, he keeps looking over there going, it's still burning. Hours have gone by. It's still, I've got to go and see.
Well, that word aside
Yeah.
is what, you know...
I must turn aside now. In other words, I must get closer. I must get closer. I must turn aside now and see this marvelous sight.
The difference is he might be like Kay said, he's just looking over, but he's tending a flock over here.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like, okay, now...
I must now stop what I'm doing and turn aside and put my focus on that. Right. So and that's also when he says, and when the Lord saw that he turned aside. Do you see it in verse 4? So it's kind of like you notice, I think it's a lot like our faith walk with God. In the beginning, before we actually come into faith, we're like, yeah, I've heard about God. But you just keep doing your thing, right? Looking everywhere, but, eventually you're like, something happens and you're like, I need to know more about God. I heard a pastor this week, another one, I did a lot, who talked about the AA program. I thought that was interesting, how they have a higher beat. I think it was R.C. Sproul that I was listening to on that one. And he was talking about this higher power and how it's so very distinct from what ours is not a higher power that's an inanimate thing. It is a personal God who has power and ability to act and react. An inanimate object, something that you would refer to as a higher power, has no power in itself. It cannot do anything. All you can do is look to it and admire it. But with God, as Moses is showing us here, he stopped looking at the inanimate things of life. And he says, instead of it, I'm aware there's a higher being. Well, he grew up in the Pharaoh's house with many, many gods. Yeah. But he was never captured by any of them. His heart was never captured. But all of a sudden, God presented himself to Moses in a way that caught Moses' attention. Moses' history has already been quite profound. He's been supernaturally preserved his life. He again supernaturally escaped. We saw back in chapter 2 that he's totally aware that he's Hebrew, and he's totally aware that there's a 400-year mark, because he said, I thought they would know that I was their Redeemer, right? And yet they didn't, so he's escaped. So he's got some information about God. He's got a lot of information about all these other foreign gods. Now, all of a sudden, God is trying to get his attention. He sees something supernatural, and it catches his attention. That's why he turns. So now God's got his attention, and God says, now that I see Moses has looked, now he speaks to him. Pretty cool?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I've seen, I have given heed, I am aware of. That's what God said. God heard and saw the affliction. So I have come down. So what else do we learn in there? What is he going to do with Moses? God, he's in verse 12, actually in verse 10 and 12, there are two statements. Pardon?
No, I'm just agreeing.
Okay, in 10, what does it say in 10? Somebody read it.
Therefore come down and I will send you to Pharaoh so that you may bring my people, the sons of Israel, out of Egypt.
Okay, now read 12 right on its heels.
And he said, certainly I will be with you, and this shall be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall worship God at this mountain.
Okay, so in both of those statements, what do you see about Moses' calling? What is God telling him?
You're doing this for me?
Yeah. God will send you, Moses, and I will be with you, Moses. So you're not going alone. I will go with you. I am sending you, and I will be with you. 10 and 12, which absolutely blows my mind then why there's a conversation that's going to follow after this, right?
But between those two verses, he says, who am I? And I think you just can't underestimate the significance of those 40 years in the desert. Because when he was in Egypt, he just went out and killed somebody. He was ready to be the deliverer.
Yeah,
I think he was proud, and here he's so humbled.
yeah.
Yes,
Who am
because
I? Who am I?
And not only that, but when you think about what he was when he was in Egypt before the killing, but like talking and all that other stuff,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden, I can't talk to people.
No.
We didn't get there yet,
that's
but I
right.
can't
He used to be
talk
such a
to
great
people.
speaker. Yeah. God humbled him, and he had to take that pride out of him to use him, and then he's like, who am I?
Yeah, yeah. But what was God's response to him in this? I think it actually comes in 4. I'll wait to go there with you because, well, I'll just tell you though. God's response to him is he becomes angry with Moses.
Well, yeah, because
Oh, yeah.
He's demanding that he have him send someone else to be the speaker, to be this messenger. I will be with you, he says. I will send you, Moses, and I will be with you. And yet, Moses is well, who am I? You know? Okay, I guess I can really relate to this personally because this is how I felt when God called me to teach. I'm like, who am I? I'm not a theologian. I've never been to Dallas Theological Seminary. I wish I had, but I haven't. Now I wish I had, in hindsight. What might be causing, because later God's going to become angry at him about this conversation. So what is it do you think is going on with Moses? He says, oh, who am I? That sounds real humble. Oh, gosh.
I think it was.
You do?
I think later on it was arrogance and it was defiance, disobedience. But I think God wasn't angry now because he knew he was humble. He knew he was.
Maybe it's a progressive growth. It's kind of a little bit like Abraham, where Abraham kept saying, well, how do I know? How do I know? Right? And so maybe this is Moses' progression. He does know God, but it is a progressive growing to really know God. I think we're all that way. We all start out with this little bit of faith, and then and in time, hopefully in time, we get stronger in our confidence in who God is and what he will do, so that we can really walk by faith and say, I don't know how it's going to work out, but I know God will handle this. Even if Paul says, should I die or live? Whichever it is for God's glory is he was open to. And eventually that's where we need to all be, that whether I live or die, it's all unto Christ that I live. Moses is in that progress maybe, or that progression of faith growing maybe.
When Moses says, who am I, God's basically saying, you're mine.
Yeah.
That's why you can
Yeah.
do this.
Therefore, come now, and I will send you to Pharaoh so that you may bring my people, the sons of Israel, out of Egypt. But Moses says to God, well, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and that I should bring the sons out of Egypt? Well, my immediate thought was, you were raised in the house of Pharaoh. If anybody knows Pharaoh and would probably have more confidence before him than any other person, it would be you.
But that's because the
Right?
40 years of being humbled,
Yeah.
of being out of that. He's not royal anymore.
True, and he also killed an
Yeah, but
Egyptian and
that's
had to
why he
run.
was scared.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, that's why he was scared of Pharaoh.
And then God's response to him is, and he said, certainly I will be with you, and this shall be a sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have come and brought the people out of Egypt, you shall worship worship God at this mountain. So it's almost like the sign is going to come after. First walk by faith, and then I'll show you. It was me.
That's the hard part.
So, yeah, it does seem like God is drawing faith out. So what are we learning about God here? What are we learning here?
He wants Moses to trust him.
Yeah. Patiently works to draw out faith and obedience. Which is very interesting because that's what the whole Pentateuch part was, and we did our review on that, was the idea that they needed to walk by faith and they needed to obey. And that's, can you read my sloppy writing? Faith and obedience. God patiently works to draw out faith and obedience. And so that's what we're seeing with Moses right here. So I have seen I will be with you. And then he said, this will be a sign. And he says, this will be the sign. Later. Okay, so it's a sign that's going to come, but not until after all the faith walking has occurred. First, you're going to have to walk by faith, and then I will show you the sign. And the sign is going to be that you will come to this mountain to worship. And when he says you are going to come to this mountain, who is he speaking of? All of Israel. All of Israel is going to come to this mountain and worship God. And what is God going to do at that mountain? He's going to bring them the 10 Commandments. Very cool when you look at it that way, isn't it? That he is literally out in the wilderness feeding the sheep. He's not yet returned to get the people out. He's out. Can you see what I did here? Is this what you're looking at, Karen? Okay. Yeah, so that's a mountain. It's a very messy mountain. That's a little tablet of the 10 Commandments with a lightning bolt. These are my pictures that help me. And this mountain to worship, that's going to be the sign that you're going to come to this mountain to worship. But it won't be a sign that he gets first. It's a sign he'll get after. Yeah. That's interesting. And it didn't dawn on me until I just said that. I'm going, okay, see, I learned while I'm teaching. I'm a verbal learner. Okay.
The thing that throws me off is that this is the sign, which makes it sound like that, that sign would be, with God walking with him. I mean, that's what throws me off.
Oh, yeah, no. Yeah, because he said this will be the sign, and then he tells them the sign is going to be Mount Sinai. But I thought by the time he does that, he's done all those miracles, brought all those plagues, people have died, they've had the Passover. I'm going, I think those are enough signs for me. I would go, I think I know God is with me.
I can't imagine the locusts.
All of that is amazing. Okay, so now we're at 13 to 18.
About 35 minutes.
Okay, 13 to 18 is the next segment. This one is a very heavy segment here because this is where we get the new title, I Am, about God. And that one you could camp on forever and ever. But we'll do the best we can with the little bit of time we have here. Let's title this section here. We see at this point God gives Moses instruction. He wants Moses to inform, because again now Moses is being called out as his messenger, right, as his spokesman or as his prophet to the people of Israel. He's saying to Moses in this segment to tell them what? His question was what to God?
Who am I supposed to say?
Yeah. Who sent him? What is your name? Right? Because at this point, I think it says that that he had not given his memorial name prior to this. This is the first time he gave this qualifying name to himself. Very, very interesting there's been a lot of name giving throughout all of Genesis, but by the time we get to Exodus, this people has been in their captivity 400 years. They have pretty much lost all their connective titles for their God,
Well, they
other
have
than he
names
is
for
God.
All of those Egyptian gods all have names.
Yes. And the name is very powerful, right? This one is significantly powerful. And if you have not done so, I recommend you definitely go online and listen to a few sermons on the subject matter of the I Am name of God, because it is really a very, it's intense and it's complicated, but yet it's very simple. When you really boil it down, in the beginning I was getting overwhelmed and I was taking so many notes and running so many cross-references and scriptures and all these different, but then in the end when I really just pulled back and said, what is this? It comes right back to what he said. This is my name, I am. So he says to Moses, tell the people.
I am who I am.
To tell the people I am has sent me to you. Okay, so now what we want to do is look at this I am statement by definition. I might need to put, so the theophany is, okay, that's what that one is. We saw, I might need to leave, we see the angel of the Lord. I didn't get it up here. Let me do it real quick. The angel of the Lord, and then it goes down to, and then he says God. So how did that? Let me get those two verses. The first one is the angel of the Lord in 2, and then it said, verse 6, he hid his face. 2, and then Moses hid his face from God. And that was in 6, right? So that told us that that's who the angel of the Lord was God. Okay, now we're going to look here at the title I am and do some word studies on this. He says, tell him I am sent me. Now what does he tell us about that? Who is the I am in this paragraph? How does he describe himself in this paragraph? What is associated with him? Well, he says, tell them I am has sent you. Furthermore, then he said what?
You shall say to the sons of Israel, the Lord,
the God of your fathers,
right,
the God of Abraham.
Isaac, and
So he extends then. So what do you see how he affixes the I am to the next two titles, the Lord and the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So now all three of those, the I am, and he says the Lord, all capital letters, and then he says the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay, those were in verses 15. That's in verse 15.
And then 16 as well.
Okay, all right, 15 and 16. I'll add it in. Okay, good. So I am is the Lord, and he's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So by definition, when you looked up the word I am in your Greek word study, what did you see?
1961.
I am is number
Self-existent, to be.
1961, and it's it's a very funny name, H-A-Y-A-H, or H-A-W-Y-A-W, Ha-ya, or Ha-hey-ya. It's really hard to pronounce. I'm sure we're not saying it right. I'm not. By definition, what did it tell you?
Self-existent.
Okay. Okay, what else? It's even simpler than that.
To be.
To be. That's it. He is to be. Boy, is that powerful. Because that verse right from there it is to be. Now what does that mean, to be? It means to exist. It can mean to have presence. Or to be in existence, right? Self-existent, to be, exist. That's pretty simple. And with it, when you go deeper into these other dictionaries, it goes on to affix the eternality of it. The one who was, the one who is, and the one who is to come. The eternal God. It affixes eternality to him. And the concept that we can't totally grasp, that is that he has always been and he will always be. That's hard to grab, isn't it? In a world where there's so much death and dying all the time in our world. So from there, I went to the next dictionary. So I'm going to pull you down to the next one. And this one is the Dictionary of Biblical Languages. Dictionary of Biblical Languages, DBL. Okay, that's what that means. And that dictionary is 181. And it says, who I am. It's who I am. I am, it's who I am. I exist, and it's the title of God with a focus on, here it is, presence, care, concern, relationship. Is that not what we've just already seen? So within the context of this narrative, he has already defined all that about himself. The dictionary where do you think they got the dictionary definition? They went to the context and pulled out their understanding of that word. They said, oh, the I am, the existing one, the eternal God, the present God. Oh, but in the context, he's also affixed to all these other things. So who I am, he's who I am. It's a title of God. It's with a focus on, okay, let's see if I can get this. Presence, care, concern. You like the word aware, care, awareness. I'll put that one on there because it means the same thing as care, or concern rather, and relationship. Okay, then, you think we're done? No, we're not done. Now we're going to go to the next dictionary. And this is the Theological Word Book of the Old Testament. TWOT, okay? Just so you know that's what that means. Theological, I don't want to write that whole thing out. And it's number 491. Now this gets cool. Theological Word Book goes on to say this is Jehovah, Yahweh, and they use the tetragrammaton here, YHWH. They go back to the root, HAWA. Remember how we had up here, HAWA, Hawa, and it's, this is funny, the isness of God. Wow. He is. I am. I is. Okay, now we know where people got those pronouns. I is. I'm the I is. Oh, that's so funny. Anyway, sorry, I had to go there. Jehovah, Yahweh, 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 or the tetragrammaton, YHWH. Now, how did we come up with those? Well, this is interesting. I got it on here. The I am. When I went into all these dictionaries, there's one of these, which is this one, this Theological Word Book of the Old Testament. If you don't like to read a lot, and try to decipher what is saying, you won't like this dictionary because it gets really technical. So I read, and I probably glean maybe 10% out of it that I really comprehend, but I get really good stuff out of it. So one of the things that this one says in there, it says is, Haya is the root of all the variations that follow in translation history. So in other words, we didn't start with Jehovah, we didn't start with Yahweh, we started with I am. From I am, you get all these others. Why? Well, this is how. It follows in translation history, developed in attempts by the Jews to show reverence for the holiness of his memorial name. So in an attempt to not pollute, even by speaking the name I am, they came up with Yahweh, they came up with Jehovah, and they came up with this tetragrammaton. In the writing of it, they would write the letters. So all of those are not new names that later God gives. They are developed by man to express the I am.
Oh, interesting.
Isn't that interesting? I thought that was interesting. It clarified it for me. I kept going, okay, I'm not catching this, because sometimes in the translation in your Bible it'll say Jehovah or it'll say Yahweh when you look it up. But when you track it back, it goes back to I am. Every one of them goes back to I am.
Yeah.
Does that make you think of anything in the New Testament?
Yeah,
Jesus says, I am. And what did the people do?
must have been
They fainted. Some of them fell down in worship when they heard him say the I am, because they were, I think what they really were is fearful God's going to zap someone in a moment, because they just claimed to be the I am.
Well, that also, they wanted to kill him because.
They were going to kill him, right. So what's interesting, though, is I'm thinking about in the garden when the soldiers came to arrest him, and they're looking, and they fell.
Yeah.
Because when he said, I am, they fell. Because they were aware of God and that holy name, and they were like, I'm going to bow at that name because I do not want to reap consequences, potentially that God would strike me dead, right? Because the Jews said, that's blasphemy.
Right.
You're speaking blasphemy. And so we're going to go through and look at some of those statements. Jesus says it over and over and over in his ministry. I am, I am, I am. And so where do all these variations, though, throughout all history come from? This word right here. Right here, the I am. However they pronounce it. I know I don't do it right, but it means to be, to exist. So Jehovah, Yahweh, the isness of God. I think that one is funny. The I is-ness of God. And I'm just going to tell you this because my pencil's not working very good. It's expressive both of his presence and his existence in this particular one. But then it goes to another name, because we thought we were done, right? No, we're not done. We have Jehovah, we have Yahweh, we have the Tetragrammaton. Now we also have Adonai. Did you know that? Adonai is another one. Now, in here it says Adonai is a Hebrew euphemism for my Lord, and serves as a respectful substitute for the YHWH name. So you're not going to stand in a conversation and say, YHWH said. So they come up with something that's respectful, so that's where Adonai comes from.
Wasn't there something that, the Jews wouldn't say that name, and they wouldn't, when they were writing out.
That's what they did, the YHWH.
That they would write it, they would wash and then write
Yes.
it and then wash again.
Yes, even, and so,
And it was a
so,
different-
so they would use, they would probably,
Change quilts?
Yep.
yes. So this right here is what they would write, because it's Hebrew. That's the language they would use. So they would write the actual Hebrew name, which means I am in English. But when they were talking in conversation, or if they were writing in other documents, they would use the Tetragrammaton. But now we know they also use things like Jehovah, Yahweh, and Adonai. They all mean the I am. Just like what we're looking here in Exodus. All of these, the angel of, where was it? The angel of the Lord, God, I am, Lord, and I am, right here. They all converge together. They're all the I am. They come from the root I am. I didn't know this. This is new to me. I thought it was really cool. Adonai. It's a respectful name substitute for I am. No, that's not writing very good. I'm going to have to get rid of this pen. That one's not a good pen. Okay. So I am is 1961 Haya. Yahweh is 941 Hawa, H-A-W-A, same root, expresses being or existence. Jehovah, the isness of God, expresses his presence and his existence. The Lord in chapter 3, verse 7, where it speaks of the Lord, capital letters, again, Yehovah, it's Jehovah, the existing one. Do you see, it's all the same root. The proper name of the one true God, it translates as Lord and Jehovah. So, we see so far in this book 3 expressions by name of God. Number 1 is the I am, which is the Lord, right? Jehovah, the existing one. The second one we're seeing in here is Elohim, where it just says God. God said this, God said that. That's going all the way back to the Genesis record, but also to the beginning of Exodus, at the beginning where God does these certain things. This is the triune God, the one true God. It's in contrast to, of course, the Egyptian gods. And then the third expression that he gives of himself in this chapter is, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and it connects him back to the covenant, which is first stated for us in chapter 2, verse 24. So I am the covenant God, your covenant God. I love the fact that he also said, I am your father, Moses. So he makes sure we get that. So what do we see so far then about God so far here? We're doing pretty good on the list here. Well, I think the first thing is he talks about he cares for man. He sees our affliction. He's aware. He's all-seeing, omnipresent. He acknowledges man's need. He patiently works to draw man out. But what I do see is that he calls servants to himself. We saw that really at the beginning, but we keep seeing it over and over. Moses, I'm calling you. I am sending you. I will be with you. Right? Anything else? Any other thoughts at this point about who God is? Who are you seeing God to be? Okay, all right.
A list of all the I wills.
Okay.
It does say one other thing about God. Overall, his sovereignty. It's not like this might happen. I will send you. I will be with you. I will bring you out. I will come down. I will stretch out my hand. I will grant this people favor. I will. It's just his.
I think he's a God of action. If you think about it from the perspective of father and child, which we often do with God, when you've got a problem, something's going on, you've been having a hard day at school when you're a child, or some kid beat you up on the playground or something. You run home to your daddy, right? You run home to Dad. Dad, Billy, blah, 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 whatever, or Susie, blah, blah, blah. What do you want from your dad?
Comfort,
You want comfort?
or maybe some action.
And some action. How about daddy, you go beat up his daddy? Yeah, right? My daddy's bigger than your daddy. I'm telling my daddy on you. Yeah, exactly. So we see, at least at this point here, for sure, the I will God is engaging here. He is sovereign. He's a God of action, and he engages with man. Isn't that awesome?
And he allows him to question it.
Okay, that's good. God allows man
He just didn't
to
say,
question.
because I told you so. He actually.
Like my mom.
Yeah.
Like all our parents.
Actually, I think He allows them to question, but he also allows man to have fear about the circumstance. Because how often do we walk in life and we're looking at things before us in our path, and we don't know where it's going. God does, but we don't. And we're like, well, how do I know that you'll go with me? How do I know that that the people are going to listen to me? You know, last time I tried to engage with them, they you know, basically they rejected me. Again, another picture of the Christ, right? Of Moses being the picture of, or a type of Jesus. When he went to his people rejected him. And so Moses is rejected, and so now he's thinking, well, what if they reject me again? So he allows us to question. He allows us to have fears. I hesitate to use the word doubt, because doubt kind of says almost, for me, I always, when you think of the idea of doubt, it makes me go to the idea of your faith. And I don't think Moses didn't have faith, I think, but he did have doubt, and his doubt was really more in himself and his doubt about the people that he was going to. And I'm like, yeah, those people, I would be having some doubts about them myself, right?
The way God dealt with that was, and what he does with us is when we have doubts, you have to remember who God is.
Mm-hmm.
What he kept saying is, I will be with you. I will. Instead of focus on yourself, you're supposed to
focus on him. Set your eyes upon Jesus, the author and perfecter of faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinful man, that you will not grow weary and lose heart. That's a perfect thought right there. I love that. That's very good, Susan. So God will, he's the sovereign. He's a God of action. By the way, he is sovereign and powerful to accomplish, right? We haven't really seen titles of God yet as the Almighty, for instance, like we will see maybe later, I'm not sure. But you can sense the power and the sovereignty and the surety. I mean, the way he speaks to Moses in this is, I will. And actually, I think he uses the word certainly, and there was another word that he used. Oh, indeed, in verse 16. I am indeed concerned. It's like there's no question here. And then there's another place where he says, I will certainly do these things for you. Okay, so... Okay, well, we're getting close to the end here. All right, so through 13 to 18, the I am. That's pretty cool, though, when you get to all those I ams, and the Jehovah, the Yahweh, the Adonai, the I am, all come out of that very basic root part, H-A-Y-A-H. That's what when you're doing your word studies on I am, that's what you'll come to. But don't be confused when you go into other places where they've used in English, they've given you a different word, and it'll take you to Jehovah, which has a different number and a slight variation of that same root word. You just have to understand it's a variation of the same root word, because they changed it up so that they could speak it and be respectful of the I am statement. That's all. I think once you kind of get that grasp in your head, you go, oh, okay, now it makes better sense to me, right? Okay. Especially when you're trying to connect all the I am statements throughout the Word of God. Think about how many times you see in Revelation, for instance, he is the one who is, who was, and who is to come. In the throne room pictures in chapter 4 and 5 of Revelation, same thing. He is, and he always has been, and he always will be. Those kinds of statements are hearkening back to the I am statement. He is the I am, the beginning and the end. Amazing. Okay. All right. Now, let's go back to 13 to 18. So we see the I am. We see him. He also says about himself, it is his everlasting name. It's his memorial name.
This is my name forever.
My name forever.
Yeah. And this is my memorial name to all generations. It's the end of verse 15.
To all my name forever, to all generations. There's my dyslexia. I'm jumping all over the board here. I'm sorry. Okay, so his memorial name forever is 15. My name forever is which verse?
Both of them are like the end of 15. It's
15, okay, good. Okay, his memorial name to all generations, my name forever. Okay, the memorial name, I liked this one because I did do a word study on this one. I'll put it up here for you. This memorial name, I looked up that word memorial. Did anybody else do that?
No.
Okay, it's 2143. And basically it means a name of renown. If I remember right, it also meant a name that is honored or considered sacred. Any other thoughts on that? And when it says forever, put that one in a different color. When it says forever, what do you see there? It's 5769. And it just means exactly what it says, everlasting. Why is that? Why an everlasting name forever? Because he is the I am. He always has been, he always will be.
isness.
He isness. It's my isness has arrived. I love that. Well, I know we're going to never forget that isness. It's going to be our new logo for Precept, isness. We are worshiping isness today.
Can you imagine the look she'd get on a shirt, God is isness?
Yeah. Yes. I'd like to tell you about my isness. Yeah. And they'll think you're a pronoun person and they'll actually engage with you. Okay. So he says then in verses 16 and 17, the Lord has appeared to me. He is indeed concerned about you, and he will bring you out of Egypt. Okay, so you can put those points in that paragraph there as well.
Not just bring you out into.
And into that land that I promised you, right? All the way back to the promise of Abraham, Isaac, which is what he says there in verse 15. Then the Lord, you shall say to the sons of Israel, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. In other words, your covenant God has sent me. He says, this is what his name is. It's forever. It's his memorial name. Gather those sons of Israel because I'm your covenant God. And he repeats it, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He appeared to me. I'm concerned about you, and I'm going to bring you out. Because why? I made covenant with Abraham, and I promised all these things to him. So,
Carrying them out.
yeah. So, honestly, every place you see the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, just write the word covenant right there next to it. Because that is what it's saying. I'm a covenant-keeping God. So let's write that up here about our God. What are we learning about him? He's a covenant-keeping God. I felt so washed and so humbled by the time I finished this particular chapter of study. It was like really being in the presence of God, really getting to know who God is, really sensing characteristics about him that are so intimate and so personal to each one of us. And also very comforting because of his power and strength and his eternalness. What an anchor to the soul to have that kind of God that we serve. And that he is the only God, the only true God. All the other gods of this earth are false. They don't even exist. They're man-made carvings and out of stone and wood. And they burn up on the fire. I think it's Ezekiel or Jeremiah said that. Yes, they have to carry them and feed them. I know. Yes.
And they can be destroyed.
Uh-huh.
That's not good. We kind of lose that sense in our churches. It seems like nowadays it's a
Oh, yeah.
God. It's a familiar, right, that, yes, he is, but without realizing how holy
I think that we've lost the holiness in the churches.
Okay, 19 to 22. One more paragraph because I know Kristen she's watching my every moment here. So 19 to 22 is about what? What does he conclude here at the closing of this? But, he says, but I know. So he knows something. He knows something about who? About Pharaoh. And he knows about the future. He knows what's... So here we go. He's a covenant. He knows the future. He knows the future. Right? I love the fact that he says, you're my friend, and that's why I tell you about the future. Right? I'm going to tell you the things that are going to happen. So here we see a picture of that. So I know what?
The circumstance, the situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're going to go to the king, and I'm sending you to the king, and I'm going to go with you when you go to the king, but guess what? The king's not going to listen at first. I'm like, what? Wait a minute. I don't know if I want to do this, Lord. Right? That's probably how he was feeling. And he says, but I will strike Egypt with all what? My miracles. So he's a miracle God. He's a God of the future. He's a miracle working God. He is a God of miracles. And
just like other people in his work, he uses, just regular man to show, okay, this is what I can do.
yes.
And they finally realize it.
So when he says he's going to do these miracles, what does he mean by miracles in this? How does he describe it? What's he going to do?
Stretch out his hand.
Against something and do what? And strike who? Egypt. So in this case, it's not a pleasant kind of miracle. I'm not going to heal you. I'm going to strike you in this case. So he says of himself, I will strike Egypt.
Well, miracle is like this fun word in this sense because he's talking to Moses, and yeah, the quote unquote miracles, they're not going to be good for Egypt, but they are going to be good for the people.
Yeah.
For the Hebrews, that's where the miracle is, for them to see.
Yeah.
It's their miracle, not Egypt. Egypt's in trouble, but
Yeah, yeah. So I'm going to do something, then Pharaoh will respond appropriately. So I will strike him, then he's going to let you go. But I'm going to send you to him, and you're going to tell him all these things, and he's not going to listen. There's going to be resistance. Just be patient. I'm telling you this ahead of time so that you're not discouraged when it happens. I want you to know ahead of time, Moses, he's not going to cooperate. He's going to resist. I will stretch out my hand against Egypt. I shall do in the midst of it, and after that, then he's going to let you go. I will grant this people favor than in the sight of the Egyptians. Now that's another prophecy fulfilled. Do you remember what he said to Abraham back in Genesis 15? They're going to go in, they're going to be there 400 years, but when they come out, what? They will come out with many possessions. That's in Genesis 15:14, if you want to write that next to your verse there in 22. Genesis 15:14 is going to be fulfilled, and I'm telling you right now, they're going to come out with possessions. Tell me why you think they need to come out with possessions.
because they're going to be doing stuff with it.
They're going to be building a beautiful tabernacle. Yes. I just watched a whole video on YouTube about the tabernacle, about them going out into the wilderness and how they had this amazing skills and talents to even heat the gold up to these very high temperatures and do all these things. And they're acting as if they don't know how that happened. I'm like, oh. Okay. You need to read the Bible. Yeah. Okay, so her question to you guys then at the close of this, I know the king will not permit you to go except under compulsion in verse 19. So you might want to make that note. That's in verse 19. And that word compulsion means hand, power, force, and a force with the ability to accomplish that task. In other words, he's going to use a force in these miracles to the extent that it will cause Pharaoh to respond the way God wants him to. But it's going to require force. John 8:31-36. Kay had you do that on page 4, question number 9. What did you come up with on that? Because I thought that was a pretty good question. Not that they aren't all good. Are you enslaved in bondage, afflicted by persistent, unrelenting sin? Or have you been set free? Think about what John 8:31-36 is teaching and parallel it with the pictures of the Egyptians. So with the Egypt, what do you think is going on there? When you went back and looked at John 8, I don't have that verse in front of me. Did anybody answer the question on your page? Tell me what you said. What did you come up with?
What was the question?
No, the question.
It's on page 9 at the top of your homework. She says, think about what John 8, 31 to 36 is teaching and parallel it with the picture of the Egyptians. Well, remember, what was Jesus coming up against in John 8 was willful, unbelieving spiritual leaders of Israel, right? The Pharisees and Sadducees. And when he was speaking to them about their history, that they had been in bondage, their response was, we've never been in bondage.
Right, I know, something like
I'm like, how could you say, have you forgotten? Exactly. So for me, I thought, interesting. But what was really more interesting is the more I pondered on this. First of all, Israel had pridefully forgotten their history, that God had brought them out of slavery. So what Jesus is doing in this conversation, if you didn't pick up on it, is he's clarifying the meaning behind their past bondage. We've already talked about everything God is doing is a picture of something he's going to do in the future. So what he did for Israel is a picture of what he's going to do in a spiritual manner for all of us. That's what Jesus is trying to draw out of these Pharisees in this conversation. So they are men who were enslaved of bondage of Egypt. The picture is you're a man enslaved to sin and you need redemption from that. That's what Jesus is actually in the conversation with them about. You're slave to sin, you don't even know it. And you need a redeemer. And then he concludes in 36, he says, if you believe that I am the Son, then you will be free indeed. So they have to believe that he is the Son. Now, what is that referring back to when we're in the context of Egypt and Genesis? What did God promise in the garden to Eve? A seed. That seed to Abraham is a son. That son in Galatians is, and that seed is Christ. That son is Christ. And then Jesus here with John is saying to them, if you believe in the Son, you will be free indeed. Free from slavery to sin, just like your forefathers were in slavery to Egypt. That's the picture. That is so good. Wasn't that good? Okay, we didn't have time to do all this, but I'm going to read very fast. You're going to give me 5 minutes, right? Okay, Jesus, the I am statements on Jesus. If you ever do a John study, you will love this. Jesus says, I am the living bread. I am the light of the world. I am the good shepherd. I am the resurrection and the life. I am the way, the truth, and the life. And I am the vine. So all of those statements throughout the progression of the Gospel of John, you can find, they're on your chart. So you'll have all the references if you don't have those easy. But there are two passages where then he really clarifies the fact that all these times he says I am are not just I am, like we think of I am. He is speaking of this I am, the I am. And Jesus, in chapter 8, verse 58 and 59, he says, and Jesus said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was born, I am. So there's very declarative. Therefore, they picked up stones to throw at him. But Jesus hid himself and went out. Then in chapter 18, 4 5, another one, very similar. Jesus, knowing all that was going to come upon him, he went forth and he said to them, whom do you seek? Now, this is in the Garden of Gethsemane. Whom do you seek? They answered him, Jesus the Nazarene. Well, that's a prophecy, that there would be a Nazarene out of Nazareth. He said to him, I am he. And he's not just saying I'm he. He's saying I am he. And Judas also, who was betraying him, was standing with them. So when he said I am he, they drew back and fell to the ground. These are the soldiers. These aren't the Pharisees. This isn't Judas who walked with him. The soldiers fell to the ground in response to this. Therefore, he again asked them, whom do you seek? And they said, Jesus the Nazarene. And Jesus answered, I told you that I am. Pretty good stuff. We did it. That was awesome. What a great passage. This was really, really rich. All right, so we'll see you next week for 2A. 2A. Look on your chart so you know what you're doing. Bye, you guys.